Logic. Part 2. Law of contradiction. The essence of this law is that you should not contradict yourself. Two statements that contradict each other cannot both be true at the same time. For example, a man is not a man. An elephant is not an elephant. Truth is not truth. In the real world, contradictions can never be true. The conclusion is simple. Do not contradict yourself. Now, let's explore this law more deeply. It can be defined as follows. Two contradictory statements about the exact same thing in the exact same respect, where one directly denies the other, cannot both be true at the same time. One statement must be true and the other must be false. For example, a person cannot be both sitting on a chair and not sitting on a chair at the same time. It is impossible for an object to be both red and not red at the same time. Each statement completely rules out the other. This law works anywhere you find a contradiction. However, specific conditions must be satisfied for two phrases to truly contradict each other. Only when these requirements are met can we be sure there is a contradiction. Let's take a closer look at them. First requirement. There must be a complete negation. One phrase must fully deny the other. It is easy to create a total negation. Just take a statement and add the word not to it. For example, the phrase, "the house is big," is a statement, and the phrase, "the house is not big," is its complete negation. A negation occurs only when the second statement completely excludes the first. The phrases, "the house is big" and "the house is small" do not contradict each other. The law does not apply here. The word "small" is just another way to describe size, not a direct denial of the first statement. A real contradiction only happens when you deny the very fact that the house is big. Second requirement. A single point of comparison. You must consider the subject in the exact same sense. All necessary conditions or properties of the object must be identical in both the statement and its negation. For example, you could call a boy tall when comparing him to a child, and then say he is not tall compared to a professional basketball player. There is no contradiction here because the conditions changed. We compared the boy to different people. A contradiction only occurs if the statement and the negation refer to the exact same situation. The boy cannot be both tall and not tall when compared to the same basketball player. Third requirement. Fixed point in time. Time must be fixed. The world is not a static picture. Change is happening all the time. But a contradiction can only be guaranteed at a single moment, when time has stopped. For example, the same apple on a branch can be green in early summer and not green later when it ripens. A contradiction might not happen if the conditions change over time. In reality, time itself does not matter. What matters is that the properties and conditions stay the same. Stopping time is an effective way to keep conditions the same. By freezing the moment, we fix all meanings. An apple cannot be both green and not green at the exact same time. Let's summarize. The law requires both the statement and its denial to refer to the exact same situation. What is the fastest way to spot a contradiction? Just find the negation and freeze the conditions in time. A total negation is simply the original statement plus the word not. Fixing the point in time guarantees that all properties remain unchanged. History. In the ancient world, people often got confused in their reasoning. Greek sophists even claimed that contradictions were normal and that truth did not exist, until Aristotle brought order to it all. He wanted to find the truth and quickly realized he needed specific tools to handle and work with it. He had to identify and write down the rules of correct thinking. Today, we call this set of rules formal logic. The law of contradiction was one of the foundations of formal logic. Aristotle identified 3 aspects of the law of contradiction to show how it works in our world. The first aspect is how the law works in reality. Aristotle said it this way.
It is impossible for the same thing at the same time to belong and not to belong to the same thing, and in the same respect.
This means that an object cannot have a certain quality and not have it at the same time. For example, flowers cannot be in a woman's hands and not be in her hands at the same time. In reality, a single thing cannot exist and not exist at once. The second aspect is how the law applies to words and language. When we follow logic, every claim must be either true or false. The philosopher said,
The most certain of all principles is that opposite assertions cannot be true at the same time.
He believed it is impossible to both affirm and deny the same thing at once. For example, if you say a woman is holding an apple, but she is not holding an apple, your listener will lose track of what you are saying. Try to prove something like that to a friend, and they will definitely think you have lost your mind. The third aspect is how our thinking works. The human mind seeks order, turning chaos into a clear structure. Aristotle stated,
For it is impossible for anyone to believe the same thing to be and not to be.
Our mind is unable to accept a contradiction as the truth. For example, it is impossible to imagine a woman wearing a crown and not wearing a crown at the same time. Your mind simply will not allow it. Actually, our brain is built to be a logical error detector. We feel a logical contradiction almost physically, like a glitch in a program. Suppose someone says to you,
I really respect your opinion, but I don't care at all what you think.
That is when you experience the internal discomfort known as cognitive dissonance. Your brain gets stuck because it cannot process both respect and its total absence at once. Logic doesn't invent anything new. It simply gives this instinct a formal name and describes how it works. Understanding this mechanism turns intuition into a practical skill. It helps you identify logical traps, even in complex situations where contradictions are hidden behind complex words or emotions. Folk wisdom and contradiction. People often used the law of contradiction in parables or fairy tales to highlight the absurdity of a situation. Here are a few such stories from various cultures. A Chinese parable about a spear and a shield. The word for contradiction in ancient China, Mao Dun, literally means spear and shield. This word comes from a story about a merchant at a marketplace who bragged that his shield was completely impenetrable. At the same time, he boasted about his spear, claiming it could pierce absolutely any defense. A passerby asked him,
What happens if you hit your shield with your spear?
The merchant could not answer because his statements were mutually exclusive. This story teaches us that our words must always reflect a consistent reality. In the real world, contradictory properties do not exist. Hodja Nasreddin and the Voice of Logic. According to an old Eastern tale, 2 arguing neighbors came to see Hodja Nasreddin. After the first neighbor spoke, Nasreddin told him,
You are right.
after hearing the second man tell the exact opposite story, he said again,
You are right too.
Hearing this, his wife exclaimed,
But that is impossible. They cannot both be right at the same time.
to which Hodja Nasreddin replied,
And you are right as well.
This story highlights that without the law of contradiction, our communication and the search for truth lose their meaning. Logic helps us understand contradictory opinions and find the truth. A Japanese parable about an empty teapot. A student asked a master if truth could be contradictory. The master placed an empty teapot in front of him and asked him to pour some tea from it. When the student said that was impossible, the master replied,
If you accept that the teapot is empty, you cannot expect there to be something inside at the same time.
This is a simple story about how you cannot get a result from something that does not exist. Logic helps us see the world as it is. A tale about a cat and a scale. In an ancient parable, an owner accused his cat of eating 3 kilograms of meat. A wise man took the cat and put it on a scale. The scale showed that the cat weighed exactly 3 kilograms. Then the wise man asked,
If this is the meat, then where is the cat? And if this is the cat, where is the meat?
This example shows that in reality, everything must match perfectly. If the facts contradict each other, it means the truth has not yet been found. Ibn Sina's argument about reality. The great philosopher and physician Ibn Sina offered a very practical way to prove the law of contradiction to those who doubt it. He said that if a person claims that contradictions are possible and there is no difference between being and not being, that person should be punished. This should continue until they accept the obvious truth that experiencing pain is not the same as not experiencing it. This example shows that logic is not a mind game, but the foundation of reality. We cannot suffer and be at peace at the same time. Our feelings and our bodies exist in accordance with the law of contradiction. Law of contradiction in real life. I would like to tell you a few stories about how the law of contradiction works and how we have learned to use it to help people. I will start with 2 simple examples of the law of contradiction in the world around us. Annihilation. A beautiful example of how opposites cannot coexist can be found in the world of physics. When matter meets its opposite, called antimatter, they destroy each other and turn into pure energy. Their properties are incompatible, so they cannot exist at the same time and place. This physical process is very similar to how the law of contradiction works. Our world is built so that 2 opposites cannot exist in the exact same place. This phenomenon is used in medicine, specifically in PET scanners, to see what is happening inside the body. During the scan, a substance is injected into your bloodstream that releases antimatter particles called positrons. Inside your body, they meet electrons and annihilate upon contact, releasing flashes of light. The scanner detects these flashes of light and uses them to draw an accurate map of your internal organs. We have learned to use this physical conflict, similar to the law of contradiction, to save human lives. Living computers. Everyone understands that the laws of logic play the most important role in electronics. Electricity either flows through the wires or it does not. A charge is either present in the correct part of the transistor or it is absent. But humans operate by the same laws as computers. A great deal in the human body functions based on the law of contradiction. Let's take a closer look at the logic behind how certain parts of the human body work. DNA is the primary instruction manual for building any living organism, and it is stored in every living cell. Imagine a massive library where everything is recorded, from the color of your eyes to how your heart should function. The most amazing thing is that this complex blueprint runs on pure logic. Essentially, thousands of genetic switches are at work in every one of your cells. At any given moment, each gene is either turned on or turned off. Your entire body is the result of millions of clear and sequential yes or no decisions. At its very core, the mechanism of our nervous system does not allow for uncertainty. A nerve cell operates on the all or nothing principle. An impulse is either transmitted or it is not. It is impossible to feel sharp pain and not feel it at the same time in the same spot. Our entire immune system is built on one fundamental principle, distinguishing between self and non-self. Every cell in your body has a special protein marker. If the system recognizes the marker, it identifies the cell as part of the body. If the marker is missing or different, then the cell is foreign and must be attacked. If this logic fails and the system views the same cell as both self and non-self, it causes severe autoimmune disorders. Our brain works like a biological error detector. When we see a logical error, the brain activates a zone for conflict detection and sends out alarm signals. This means the brain perceives an information mismatch almost like physical discomfort. This state is called cognitive dissonance. Research shows that we are born with this internal programming. The best way to experience cognitive dissonance is to look at the impossible drawings by Dutch artist Moritz Escher, or the famous Penrose triangle. If you follow the sides of the Penrose triangle with your eyes, each detail seems to be positioned correctly. But when you try to see the whole figure, you realize its edges are connected in a way that is impossible in three-dimensional space. At that moment, your mind gets stuck and your eyes jump between the inconsistencies because it cannot accept a contradiction as truth. Furthermore, our brain remembers meanings, not symbols. Because it cannot create a clear image of an object that both has and does not have a certain property, it cannot encode it. This is why we forget dreams or nonsensical ramblings so quickly. They violate the logical structure of reality. Our brain also does not mix visual signals. For example, if you show a red circle to the right eye and a blue square to the left eye in the same spot, the brain will not blend them into one purple shape. It will start showing you the circle and then the square, one after the other. Essentially, our eyes are designed so that information is double-checked the moment it enters. Our hippocampus is responsible for moving information from short-term memory to long-term memory. It functions based on the principle of a logic check. If new data contains an internal contradiction, the hippocampus blocks it from being recorded to protect the integrity of existing experience. But if it considers the new information more important, it erases the old data and replaces it with the new. There are two very important reasons for this behavior. The first reason is that our brain is very rational and does not want to waste extra energy. But storing absurd or meaningless connections requires a huge amount of energy. The second reason is that our brain works like a prediction machine. It needs to know what will happen in the future to avoid problems. And since information that violates the law of contradiction makes future predictions impossible, neural networks simply do not create lasting connections for such data and delete it as information junk. Now, let's see how understanding this rule helps us create reliable tools and find answers that are beyond doubt. Foolproofing. Engineers have a term known as foolproofing. This concept comes from Japanese engineering and means designing devices that prevent incorrect use. It is the technical application of the law of contradiction. The point of foolproofing is to design things so they physically prevent any action that violates safety rules. The simplest example is your phone charger's plug. It is specifically designed so it cannot be plugged in the wrong way. There are many such examples in our daily lives. A microwave oven cannot work with the door open, so the radiation doesn't harm anyone. An elevator cannot move if the door is open, to prevent passengers from getting hurt. A washing machine won't start a cycle unless the door is locked, to keep water from spilling on the floor. An electric kettle turns off after the water boils, to prevent overheating or a fire. All of this follows one simple principle. Devices should only work under safe conditions. If conditions are unsafe, the devices simply shut down. Standardization. Standards were a very important invention for humanity. We do not think much about how important standardization is, but even archaeologists do not consider societies to be ancient civilizations if they lacked at least their own standards for weights and measures. This process is based on the same law of contradiction. A standard removes any uncertainty. An object either matches the required size exactly, or it is considered defective. Any deviation from the norm is always viewed as deception. In the past, the world of machinery was lost in chaos. Craftsmen made everything by eye, and a nut from one craftsman would never fit another's bolt. Standardization changed this by bringing strict logic directly into production. This structured system allows us to build complex machines from millions of parts made in different corners of the world. We have introduced thousands of standards into our lives, and they surround us everywhere now. For example, we measure time in seconds, minutes, and hours, which are the same all over the world. An A4 sheet of paper always fits any printer because its dimensions are specified down to the millimeter. The voltage in a power outlet always has strict parameters so that home appliances work reliably and do not burn out. Bank cards are exactly the same size so that your card fits any ATM anywhere in the world. Money does not just have a fixed size and appearance, but every bill also has its own value. The metric system was created so that scientists all over the world could understand each other better. Even the language we speak is a standard. Without strict definitions for every word, we simply would not understand anything being said to us. Dr. House method. Do you know what a differential diagnosis is? This is a method doctors use to find a diagnosis when it is not clear from the start. In the process, they use the law of contradiction. Instead of trying to prove a disease exists, this method focuses on finding proof that it cannot exist. The entire search for the truth becomes a hunt for contradictions. If a disease has a required symptom that the patient does not have, the doctor immediately rules out that option as false. A diagnosis and reality cannot contradict each other at the same time. The doctor simply takes a list of all possible causes and begins testing their logical consistency. Every impossible scenario is discarded until the only one left is the one without any contradictions. This method helps identify even the rarest and most complex diseases. And this is not just some forgotten method. It is part of everyday medical practice. For example, in medical records, doctors often write the phrase "rule out" before the name of a disease. This means the doctor is not looking for the disease, but is actively seeking proof that it is impossible. Medicine also uses the idea of unique symptoms. These are signs that only occur with one specific disease. If the patient does not have this sign, then the disease cannot be present. Any medical test is simply a way to get a yes or no answer. A test either shows the presence of a substance, or it does not. Or it shows that a reading exceeds the normal range, or it does not. You can't be a little pregnant or have a slightly positive virus test. For a doctor, the law of contradiction is a very reliable tool. It allows them to stop guessing and methodically cut away false possibilities to find the right solutions. Alibi. Everyone understands the importance of a fair justice system, especially when dealing with it in the real world. In a courtroom, the law of contradiction serves as one of the most reliable lie detectors. Justice is only possible because the truth never contradicts itself. If a court is told that a person has an alibi, it means they are innocent. The core meaning of the term alibi is incredibly simple. A person cannot be at the crime scene and somewhere else at the same time. If a camera records you in a cafe, but a witness claims you were not there because they saw you at the exact same time at the scene of a theft, a logical dead end arises. Under the law of contradiction, one of these statements is guaranteed to be 100% false. In the legal system, this law serves as a strict filter. Every piece of testimony is checked for compatibility with facts that have already been proven. If a piece of evidence contradicts reality, it must be excluded immediately. This is exactly what any legal defense is built on. If even a single logical contradiction is found in the prosecution's case, the entire case falls apart and must be revised. The law of contradiction turns a trial from a simple dispute of opinions into a search for objective truth. We trust the court only when its decision is logically flawless and free of internal contradictions. Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes is perhaps the world's most famous popularizer of the law of contradiction. His famous quote is,
When you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth.
This perfectly sums up the law of contradiction in action. For Holmes, an investigation is not just about gathering evidence, but about checking reality for consistency. If a theory of the crime contradicts even a single proven fact, Holmes ruthlessly throws it into the trash. Detective logic looks for inconsistencies in the small details. When a person says they walked through heavy rain, yet their clothes and hat are perfectly dry, you have a contradiction. Fabric cannot be both wet and dry at the same time. To a detective, this is a clear sign that the statement is false. Graveyard of false ideas. The history of science is a graveyard of theories that failed to withstand the law of contradiction. Progress is only possible because a scientist cannot ignore a situation where calculations say one thing and real experience says the exact opposite. Science is not about accumulating knowledge. It is a ruthless hunt for contradictions. Every theory, even the most beautiful one, is valid only until it runs into the first fact that contradicts it. Real scientists do not just come up with something new and immediately tell everyone about it. They always double-check their results. One of the important rules for a researcher is reproducibility. An experiment cannot produce two different results under absolutely identical conditions. If the result of an experiment constantly varies, it means it is not a discovery, but a mistake. If water at the exact same pressure sometimes boils at 100 degrees and sometimes at 50 degrees, that is not science, but a measurement error. In reality, facts are always definite. The second important rule is the search for logical flaws. This is a universal strength test for both established knowledge, which must be reevaluated over time, and new hypotheses. A scientist must be a professional hunter of contradictions. First, they find an inconsistency in an old theory that has reached a dead end, and then they test their own idea in the exact same way. If your theory fixes an old problem but creates a new one at the same time, it is no better than the old one. Truth cannot be a collection of patches. It must be logically flawless in every way. The history of science has seen many such contradictions. For example, an older theory stated that when an object burns, it loses part of its substance. Antoine Lavoisier burned metal in a closed flask and discovered that it became heavier, even though according to the old theory, it should have become lighter. The experimental findings contradicted the theory, and the theory had to be changed. Another example. Previously, it was thought that food spoiled because of internal decomposition. Louis Pasteur boiled broth, thereby destroying the microbes inside and sealed it airtight. The food stopped spoiling, and our knowledge of the world around us became a little more accurate. Without the law of contradiction, science would turn into a mere collection of myths. We progress only because we know when to say no to ideas that fail to pass the test of reality. Mathematical magic. In the exact sciences, there is a method called proof by contradiction. This method is often called the mathematician's most elegant weapon. Instead of proving something directly, scientists use the law of contradiction to uncover a falsehood. They assume the opposite is the absolute truth just to see where it leads. If the world really worked the way we assumed, then none of the conclusions would contradict one another. But in some situations, when you cannot prove something directly, it turns out to be easy to prove that the opposite is impossible. Let's look at a simple example of this kind of proof and show that there is no such thing as the largest number. Suppose the reverse is true, and the absolute last and biggest number in the universe exists. But if we add even just 1 to it, we get a number that is even larger. Instantly, our greatest number is no longer the greatest. This contradiction proves that the largest number does not exist. This is exactly how mathematical magic works. We don't need to count all the way to infinity to understand its laws. Finding just one logical mistake in a false assumption makes the truth completely clear. Predicting the future. In our world, there is such a thing as theoretical science. You might wonder why it is called theoretical instead of just science, and how it differs from regular science. The answer is that theoretical science focuses on making scientific predictions, rather than dealing with what we can already see around us. In fact, it predicts the future and allows us to know about things long before they can be seen or touched. But how is that possible when no one knows the future, because it hasn't happened yet? The secret is that the law of contradiction is an excellent and highly accurate tool for predicting the future, provided you know how to use it correctly. This isn't magic or fortune-telling. It is a rigorous analysis of facts, where logic serves as a tool for looking into the future. Here are a few examples of these kinds of predictions. Using logic, Dmitry Mendeleev predicted the properties of chemical elements that hadn't been discovered yet by creating a periodic table with empty spaces for the missing elements, which were found later. Charles Darwin predicted the existence of an insect with a 30-centimeter proboscis after studying the shape of a deep orchid flower, and 40 years later, such a moth was actually discovered, completely proving his logical conclusion. Halley's Comet was named after Edmund Halley, who used nothing but the law of universal gravitation to calculate the exact date of its return decades before it actually reappeared. But we want to know the future, too. This isn't just a whim. It is a way to reduce anxiety and find emotional stability. We are afraid of the unknown because it feels threatening to us. The more accurately we can predict the consequences of our actions, the more confident we feel. We want to control our lives, which is why it is so important for us to know what lies ahead in the next minute, hour, or year. We have surrounded ourselves with technology that tells us the weather forecast, whether there will be traffic on our commute, and how our health is doing. That is why one of the main jobs of our brain is to make predictions. That is right. From the moment we are born, our brain is constantly building models of the future based on past experiences. It tries to predict everything, from the simplest actions, like taking a step forward and instantly figuring out where to step to avoid a puddle, to massive goals, like predicting how purchasing a certain car right now will let you take family trips down the road. When reality doesn't match the prediction, the brain immediately triggers an alarm. For example, if your brain thinks there is cold water in a cup, but you pick up boiling water instead, you will instantly feel that alarm go off. And if the cup is burning hot, your brain will instantly signal your fingers to let go without asking for your permission. You won't even realize why it happened, but your hand will drop the cup incredibly fast. The most powerful prediction tool we have is logic. This kind of prediction is based on making a series of choices between two options. At each step, we ask a question that can only be answered with a yes or a no. Every time you ask a question, you rule out the answer that conflicts with established facts. By choosing an answer and using it to form the next question, you move closer to the correct conclusion step by step. This is the perfect way to narrow down your search by filtering out lots of wrong answers at every step. That is exactly how the brain operates when trying to understand what will happen next. Let's look at an example to see how this analysis works. I will combine a few questions into one just to keep the chain of reasoning a bit shorter. But make no mistake, your brain actually asks far more questions, and every single one is a basic true or false question. For example, you notice your mom putting 5 plates on the table, even though there are only 4 people in your family. The extra plate is either for a guest or she put it there by mistake. Your mom knows exactly how many people are in the family, so a mistake is highly unlikely. Right now, a dish is being cooked in the kitchen that only your grandmother likes. So either your grandma is coming over or it is someone else. Regular guests wouldn't even know this dish, and your mom doesn't make it for anyone else. That means your grandmother is definitely the one coming over today. You haven't seen the guest yet, but you already know exactly who is coming over this evening. Your brain does all of this constantly and so fast that you don't even realize it is happening. In some people, these processes are highly developed, which is why we say they have good intuition. However, predicting the future doesn't just happen subconsciously. It is a skill anyone can learn. It is a skill you can actually practice and improve. Once you get into the habit of checking your thoughts for contradictions, you start seeing hidden connections. This allows you to figure out what will happen next simply by using facts and common sense.
Honesty and precision.
Honesty is about more than just not lying to others. First and foremost, it is an inner harmony where your thoughts are not at war with each other. When a person is called whole, it means they have no internal contradictions. In Eastern philosophy, being honest means bringing your nature into harmony, where there is no conflict between appearance and reality. Truth only works where there is trust. But when you learn to lie, you also learn not to trust yourself. Imagine a bridge over a canyon. The bridge does not exist, but you are sure it is there. You step onto it, and immediately fall through. The exact same thing happens in your mind when you lie. You become so used to lying that you stop noticing it. You begin to accumulate false knowledge and you start accepting it as the truth. And when you suddenly need this knowledge and try to rely on it, you find that it is not there. Your knowledge contradicts the real world. Immanuel Kant viewed lying as a fundamental logical error, which he called a practical contradiction. Reality, however, is always honest by default. It does not have glitches or lies. Fire burns, and it is impossible for it not to burn. To see this world clearly and understand the past, present, and future, your thoughts must work just as precisely and consistently as nature itself. Precision is a crucial component of being honest. To develop critical thinking, it is important to practice not only honesty, but also precision. Imagine that you ask a friend, "Where is the key?" He answers honestly, "Somewhere in the room." He is telling the truth, but his answer lacks precision and is therefore completely useless. Precision is knowing how to correctly identify a thing and distinguish it from what it is not. It means giving a thing just one clear definition that fits it perfectly. Being precise means leaving no room for gray areas where mistakes like to hide. This way, your thoughts become solid and complete. You begin to see the world without illusions, and it becomes understandable and predictable. When your internal model of the world is built without contradictions, it begins to match reality. This allows you to see the world clearly, understand how it works, and predict the outcomes of events. Logic and laughter. Humor is more than just entertainment. It is a natural response of your mind and a vital signal to those around you. Let's look at a few theories about the origins of laughter. The false alarm theory. The idea is that laughter is a vocal signal our ancestors used to tell their tribe members that a perceived threat turned out to be a false alarm. For example, if someone trips and falls but stands up unhurt, the people around them laugh. Laughter signals that everything is fine, there's no danger, and you can relax. This is the reason why people still laugh when someone falls down. The brain sends a signal to others that everything is okay and nothing bad happened. The incongruity resolution theory. It states that laughter occurs when the brain encounters initially confusing or unexpected information and then resolves the contradiction or stops perceiving the absurdity as a danger. For example, when you hear the beginning of a joke, your brain is already predicting a logical ending. But when the punchline turns out to be unexpected or absurd, there is a sudden realization of a new meaning. This is what triggers laughter. The relief theory. This theory argues that humor functions as a way to release excess emotional tension. This happens when the body builds up energy for a specific action, which then becomes unnecessary because the situation changes. For example, you might spend 5 minutes trying to open a door by tapping a credit card against the electronic lock instead of using a key. Even such a common mistake usually brings a slight smile to your face and will certainly make anyone watching laugh. When you think about it, all of these theories reveal that laughter frequently happens precisely when logic breaks down. When the brain sees a violation of logic, it gets scared for a split second because reality has become broken and unpredictable. At that moment, the body releases energy to handle the problem. But as soon as the mind realizes it's just a play on words or a harmless mistake, this extra energy is released as laughter. A sense of humor is a skill that makes your thought process more precise. Laughing at absurdity works like a good workout, training you to instantly see the difference between fact and fiction. This habit of laughing at logical contradictions will work like an alarm, warning you of an error even before it becomes obvious. Conclusion. Our world is a rational place. It does more than follow logic. It is made of it. At the foundation of our reality is the law of contradiction. This law is the most precise tool for understanding everything that happens. Understanding how the law of contradiction works turns intuition into a conscious skill. It is a skill that can and must be practiced. Reconstructing the past, analyzing the present, and predicting the future are not guesswork, but careful work with facts. Logic allows us to see the inevitability of events at any point in time. If you notice a contradiction in the details, then you are looking at a lie. The ability to promptly reject absurd ideas guarantees the clarity of your mind. While others are confused by the details, the law of contradiction finds the shortest path to the truth. It turns uncertainty into a clear structure. Reality is always unambiguous, and the truth never contradicts itself.